Hey guys, welcome back to Bear Mountain Builds. I'm Zach, and today we are building some vertical sliding storage shelves. Now this is 750 cubic feet of storage on a 2 foot by 5 foot base, so it's perfect for you guys with a smaller shop or garage and you need a lot of storage because there is an absolute ton of storage in here. Each of these shelves are double-sided, which means you have 100% access to everything on these shelves. There's no more losing stuff at the back of a cabinet anymore because you don't have to go digging for it. Now these are perfect because they have adjustable shelves for all of your hardware like this, or you can put in a French cleat system to store all of your tools and it looks so good. Or you can make your own custom shelves to fit all your clamps just like this. Now, these shelves are perfect as well for your paint, your stains, your paper towel rolls, and they're even deep enough to fit a 1-gallon can of paint. Now, I offer detailed plans on this entire build. They include a cut plan, assembly instructions, and all dimensions for it. So hit the subscribe button and let's get started.
We're kicking off this project with cutting up some 2x4s that are going to make up the frame.
All right, we've got all of our 2x4s cut to length. Now these are going to be making up our frame, so the first thing we're going to be doing is laminating some of these 2x4s together. That way we get increased thickness on our members, which makes them even stronger, because I want to be able to load up these shelves with as much stuff as I want and never have to worry about the weight. Now, let's get this thing put together.
The vertical posts of the frame have a lap joint on either end that will allow for solid load transfer through the wood. I'm using 2 offcuts of 2x4 to ensure the shorter piece is centered. I prefer laminating 2x4s together for all of my builds that require a lot of strength as opposed to using a 4x4 because they are stronger, cheaper, and most importantly, resist twisting. The 3 main cross pieces are also laminated 2x4s because they need to be super strong since they will be carrying the full load of these shelves in shear. With the lamination done, it's time to start assembling the frame. I'm putting together each side of the frame first using number 10 2.5-inch construction screws, and I'm making sure these sides are square. That way I don't have any issues down the road with the channels being at weird angles. I'm pocket holing the spacer in place first to square the frame, then flip everything over and mount the cantilever. Now, we want this frame strong, so I'm using a lot of glue and screws. I'm making sure to keep all the pieces nice and snug so we get really good load transfer throughout the whole frame.
All right, so the frame is really starting to come together. We have both of our side walls fully assembled. They're looking good, so we're moving on to our cross pieces. Now, for our cross pieces, we're going to have 3 on top made of our laminated 2x4s, and these are going to be taking the whole weight of those shelves, so we want to have them be really locked in, so we're going to be putting those in place with some lag screws, and then we're just going to do 2 single 2x4s at the bottom that are just going to be mounted in place with some pocket screws just to hold that whole frame together. Now, this frame is getting a little too big for this assembly table, so we're going to be taking this party to the floor.
I'll admit this is a pretty nasty looking joint, but it will be on the bottom, so we shall never speak of it again. This thing's getting pretty big, so I'm clamping a couple blocks to the frame to help hold the cross pieces in place while I attach them. I need everything to be really snug, so I'm using a ratchet strap to keep everything nice and tight. Driving lag screws into the ends of boards can cause splitting, so I'm opening up the hole in just the first two 2x4s to just slightly less than the diameter of the threads of the screw to take some of that pressure off.
All right, we've got our whole frame put together, up on the wall. It's looking really good and sturdy, but it is not. Because once we get our shelves in here, and if you were able to pull all those shelves out, it's gonna get really front heavy, it's gonna wanna tip over on us, which is no good because we want our frames to be rock solid. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna be mounting this frame to our wall using these L brackets. Now, with these L brackets, they're gonna be going into our frame and into the studs of the wall. Now, in my case, I have horizontal studs every 2 feet, so I can put my brackets in like this. However, most of you guys are probably in your garage, which means you're gonna have vertical studs spaced every 16 inches. So to kind of show that, we'll assume these lines are vertical studs. What you're gonna do is you're gonna mount into the header of your frame and into your studs all along this entire header piece. And then you can put a few on the bottom just to kind of hold that bottom in place. But with that, this thing will be rock solid. Now, let's get this thing mounted up.
I'm mounting these brackets to the frame using number 10 2.5-inch construction screws, and then to the wall with number 10 3-inch construction screws.
Now that we got our frame attached to the wall, this thing is rock solid. I can hang off the front of it and it's not gonna tip over and crush anybody, which is important. So next up, it's time to put our heavy duty channels in place. Now there's gonna be 4 channels, 1 per shelf. They're gonna be mounted to our cross pieces using these C brackets. They're just gonna go up and then they slide into place. Now, let's keep going.
I have all the dimensions for locating these brackets in the plans, but you do need to be reasonably precise where you're putting these, or else the channels won't be able to slide in. I'm cutting the 12 gauge 1 5/8 inch strut channels to length on my chop saw, but you could cut these on a miter saw with just a multi-material blade as well. Now, for those of you who have never seen these before, they're super heavy duty and you can just get them from Home Depot. Fits like a glove.
All right, our channels are in place. They are super sturdy and absolutely rock solid. So with that, it means our frame and channels are done. It's time to move on to our shelves. So the first thing we gotta do is start stripping out some 3/4 inch plywood.
I like to strip my plywood down to a more easy to handle size first, then cut it to final width on the table saw.
All right, we've got all of our pieces cut to final size. Now, at this point in the project, you're probably starting to realize there are a lot of components, but I do offer plans for this that make this whole build way simpler and they're easy to follow. So if you're interested in those, I'll have them linked down below in the video description. These pieces are going to be the backbone of each shelf. Now what we need to do next is we're going to be attaching 2 trolleys to each piece. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to route out a spot for these trolleys to nest into, and then we're going to drill a couple holes. That way they can be attached with these brackets. Now, let's keep going.
I made a template for routing out the inset for the trolley that works perfectly with the 20-volt max DEWALT router with a 1/4-inch bit, and it's included in the plans, but if you're using a different router, you will have to modify it slightly. For these trolley brackets, I had to drill out the holes just a little to make the 3/8 inch by 1.5 inch bolts fit. I just got these new Pilot Point drill bits, which have a little tip at the end so you don't have to pre-drill it all to prevent a wandering bit, and I'm really liking them, so if you're interested at all, I'll have them linked down below. You can't see it in the shot, but I put a bracket on both sides, then torque them down.
All right, we got our trolleys added to our backbones. Now I've hung them up on here and they slide really well, which is great. Now we're not going to assemble these up here, but I just wanted to show you that. Now next up, we need to have a front and a back for each of these shelves. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to cut out some more 3/4 inch plywood. Then we're going to run a dado down the middle, and that's just going to be able to sit around our backbones. So let's keep going.
You could use a router for this, but I just got this new data blade and it's actually been pretty sweet. I can cut a slot that is exactly 23/32 of an inch. You'll see how tight of a fit it makes coming up, but because it fully locks together, it's the first ever dado safe enough to be sold in the EU, so you can check it out if you're interested. I have it linked down below. So close.
All right, we've got all of our front and backs cut to final size, and we've got our dado running down the middle, so we're almost ready for assembly, but not quite yet. We need to drill some holes for our adjustable shelves. Now, in my case, I need to drill 4 rows. I need to have 1 on each outside edge and then 1 on each side of our dado seam. Now, there are jigs out there that do a really good job at this, but in my case, which is unique, it doesn't really work as well. So I can use those jigs to drill the holes on the outside edges, but that squaring tab on those jigs is too tall, so it doesn't allow it to lay flat when I put it into the seam for the dado. That's why I've gone ahead and made my own. I've 3D printed this and put in some aluminum inserts, so that way it rides inside my dado seam really well, and it works super great. Now, I have made several other useful tools and jigs to make my projects go faster and be a little bit easier. And I'm curious if you guys would want to see more of these or maybe even buy them. So let me know in the comments. Now, let's drill some holes.
I started drilling these holes 8 inches from the top to about 12 inches from the bottom. In retrospect, you can use those other hole jigs for drilling the holes along the dado channel if you just put them on top of a small piece of 1/4 inch plywood. Instead of drilling all these holes, you could also just buy and install an adjustable shelf track system, but it can get a little pricey.
All right, we got all of our holes drilled, so we're ready for assembly. So what we got to do is we're going to put our back piece down on the table. We're going to load up our dado with a bunch of glue. We'll put our backbone in place, brad nail it in place, and then do the same thing for the other side.
You'll probably want a second set of hands for this part, but I'm telling you, with the dado, the backbone fits so well it stands up on its own once it's set in place. I'm putting these shelves together with a lot of glue and 18 gauge 1 3/4 brad nails. With the front and backs attached, I went ahead and cut out the bottom and top braces, then mounted them with more glue and brad nails. Now these just help reinforce the front and backs, as well as keep everything square. Now that the shelves are fully assembled, I cut out the shelf guides, applied some low friction tape, and then mounted them to the bottom of the frame using glue and 18 gauge 1 1/4 brad nails. I'm also using a piece of 3/4 inch plywood to set the guide back from the front and used another spacer to set the spacing between each. These guides work by capturing the backs of the shelves that just prevent them from swinging. With the shelves in place, I can attach the trolley stop where the backs of the shelves barely still stay within those guides when the shelf is fully pulled out. With the shelves fully installed, I went ahead and mounted my handles. I'll preface with you don't have to do this, but I added some furring strips and 1/4 inch plywood panel to the sides of the frame in order to give it a more finished look. With that, these shelves are finished, and it's time to move in.
All right, the sliding shelves are done. And not only do they look great, but these have a ton of storage in them. This is 750 cubic feet of storage on a 2 foot by 5 foot base, so it's perfect for you guys with a smaller shop or garage. Or honestly, it can go in a big garage because this is an absolute ton of storage. I mean, look at this. You can have all of your hardware 100% ready to go. You're never gonna lose anything ever again, just like you would in a regular cabinet where stuff gets lost in the back, because it's all right here. Now, you can also store your tools on a French cleat system, and it looks really good and clean. Or you can do a little bit of both, where you have shelves and French cleats in here, so you can kind of mix your storage options. And finally, these are great for storing your paints or your caulking, because these shelves are even deep enough to store a 1-gallon can of paint. Now, in all honesty, I basically pulled everything out that I had to put in here to show the storage application for these. Now this side looks great, but I ran out of stuff. There's so much storage in here, there's literally nothing on the back side right now because I don't have anything else to put in here. So obviously I need to go to the store and buy some more stuff. But if you're interested in this build whatsoever, I do offer plans for it. It makes the whole process so easy. It has a cut plan, it has all the dimensions and the entire assembly process. So if you're interested, I'll have a link down below in the video description. Now, as always, hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button for me. Helps me out a ton, and I really do appreciate it. And if you have any thoughts or questions on the whole build, leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.